Chapter 3 The Tomb in the Mountains. Feng Candle in the Tomb. The Lost City English edition. We were sent to Inner Mongolia. Back then, though honestly, it wasn't far from Heirloom and almost brushing the outer Mongolian border. Most folks there were Han, with a handful of Manchu and Mongol. Families scattered in the hills. Our group of educated youth totaled 6, 4 guys and 2 girls. The moment we arrived, we were stunned. The world around us was nothing but rolling mountains and endless virgin forest. You could walk 100 miles past the last farm, house, and not see a single living soul. No roads, no power lines. In this place, lighting an oil lamp was a privilege reserved for cadres. Owning a flashlight, that was like having a presidential suite. Back in the city, we thought the whole country was upstairs, downstairs, collector lights and telephones. Turns out, the motherland had corners where time simply forgot to move on. Still, everything felt fresh. None of us had ever seen mountains so big, forests so wild. Even the food was new game. Wild greens, river fish. Life wasn't luxurious, but we didn't go hungry. Later, when we heard from other Sandang youths who went to Shanxi and had seen a grain of rice for months, we figured we'd gotten lucky. Work here was not too heavy. People lived off the mountains more than the fields. Summers, we took turns guarding the crops at night, not from thieves, but wild animals. Unlike the vast green plains of North China, the farmland here was patchy, a small field here, a slope there. You had to keep moving through the night to check them all. That night, it was my turn with Fatty. He snored in the straw hut while I went for a round with my flashlight. Everything looked fine. I turned the bag toward the hut. Then I froze. Pale round shape loomed in the dark night. Far ahead, white and motionless, like a ghost squatting in the grass. I rubbed my eyes. No, it was not imagination. The thin, shimmy red faintly in the moonlight, just enough to make the hairs on my arms stand up. I didn't believe in ghosts. Probably some kind of animal, I told myself, gripping a stick from the ground. The night was pitch black. The thing glowed faint. Lay and swayed ever so slightly. Not an animal, at least. Not like any I'd seen, but it was moving. Even so, I was not about to swing blindly. Curiosity always beat fear for me, barely. I crept closer, lifted the stick, and prodded the white lump. It felt soft. Before I could react, a voice exploded in the darkness. What the hell, Hu Bai? Why are you poking my ass with a stick? I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Fatty. Turned out he'd eaten some bad berries that day, and nature had called right there behind the hut. His big white butt gleaming like a ghost lantern in the dark. Next morning, he demanded psychological composition, claiming he lost millions of brain cells from the fright. I said, millions? You think you've got that many to spare? He shot me a dirty look. Fine then, Comrade Hu. You are paying me back another way. Yesterday I saw a giant beehive out by Tuan Shenzi. You're coming with me to knock it down. we'll get the honey, make some drinks, maybe trade some to Old Yan, the hunter for rabbit meat. Old Yan was the father of Yanzi, the girl whose house we were staying in. They often brought back wild game for us, and we always felt guilty mooching off them, so the idea of gifting them honey sounded fair. Fatty and I were men of action. Back in the army, we were famous for getting into trouble, so taking down a beehive, child's play. I borrowed Yanzi's young hunting dog, a half-grown mutt, named Chestnut Yellow. She'd raised it herself and hadn't taken it hunting. Tuansanzi wasn't far as the crow flies, but with no roads. It took half a day climbing ridges to reach it. The forest there was vast and gloomy. The villagers warned us not to go too deep, said a man once got misled by a human bear. We'd seen him, a man with half his face missing, skin scarred and twisted where the bear's rough tongue had torn the flesh off. You don't forget something like that. So we stayed near the edge of the forest, where Fatty said he'd seen the hive. It hung from a big tree by a stream, massive and dark. From a distance, it looked like a legless cough stuck to the trunk. The air hummed. The wasps were huge, black, angry, poisonous looking. Sound alone made my scalp tighten. Fatty, I muttered. This thing's a damn atomic bomb. You sure you're not trying to kill me? He grinned. If it were small, I wouldn't need your help, would I? Fine, I said. Our army is invincible. Death to the imperialist was PS. We armored up. Army coats, fur hats, scarves, gloves, even borrowed a veil from one of the girl comrades. Then we each cut a hollow reed to breathe through when we hid underwater. Fatty counted down. 1, 2, 3. He jabbed the hive hard with a hive pole. 4 or 5 thrusts later, the whole fin tore loose and hit the ground with a thud. The air exploded. Thousands of wasps poured out, darkening the sky, buzzing like a storm. I didn't hesitate, lit the dry grass bundle I prepared, shoved it under the hive, and let the smoke roll. Fatty and I built a dirt wall to stop the fire from spreading, but it didn't stop the ones that had already spotted us. They came in waves. I could feel the thuds against my hat, my coat, my haysguard, like hailstones. Go! I shouted. We bolted for the creek, dove in head first. The water was icy, barely waist deep, but it saved our skins. I held my hat down and breathed through the reed. When I finally surfaced, most of the wasps were dead or gone. The smoke still hung thick, curling above the trees. The mountain air bit like knives, and the water froze my bones. We crawled onto the rocks, shaking and panting, the sun warming our backs. Fatty hauled himself halfway up, then yelped. Blood gushed from his hand. Something sharp in the water cut me wide open. I went back in, furious. No one lived out here. What could cut him? I groped around and pulled up a broken porcelain bowl, blue and white glaze, old style, reminded me of my grandpa's song. dynasty pieces. His whole collection had been smashed during the Four Olds campaign. So seeing this shard out here gave me a weird, bittersweet feeling. Still, I tossed it aside. Useless. Fatty wrapped his hand and dove back in for a quick wash. We hung our clothes on the rocks to dry. When I whistled, Chestnut Yellow came running with a fat gray rabbit in its mouth. We whooped it like idiots. I tore a piece of honeycomb, dripping with honey, and gave it to the dog as a reward. Then we built a fire. Fatty skinned the rabbit. I basted it with honey and zest, roasted it over pine wood. When the smell hit, smoky, sweet wild, I swear, I almost ate my own fingers. We split the rabbit, fed a hide to the dog, and devoured the rest. City life could never give you a meal like that. When we'd eaten our fill and the clothes had dried, we carried the enormous hive home on a pole between us, singing loud revolutionary songs as we went. The world is big, but not as big as our hearts. The party skinness is deeper than the mountains. Chestnut Yellow barked along, tail wagging like a drumbeat. It felt less like a victory march and more like a scene from a movie, two fools, one dog, and the forest echoing with songs. Back at the village, half the people were gone. Yanzi, I asked, where's everyone? Flood on the Chaganha River, she said. Logs from the lumber yard got washed away. Whole village went to help. The party secretary said to tell you to not cause any trouble. I snorted. Us? Trouble? We're model youths of Chairman Mao. She laughed. Since you came, even the hens stopped laying eggs. We grinned. Maybe she was right. We poured out the honey-filled more than 10 big clay jars. Yanji said the empty combs could be fried with venison for dinner. That night, we feasted wild meat, honeycomb laughter, and the strange comfort of life deep in the mountains. None of us knew that, just beyond those hills, something far older and far darker was waiting.